off video until you call me on, and then I'll just participate in the program.
Perfect. Thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Okay, Hare Krishna, everyone. It's 8 o'clock, so we'll go ahead and get started. Our Kirtan leaders are not here just yet, so I guess I'll sing. Nope, they're here.
They're here, yeah.
Okay, Ahana and Ridhamai, it's your turn to lead the Kirtan today. Since it is Friday, I'll ask that you promptly end at 8:10.
Okay. Namah Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Shivadeva Vedanta Swami Iti Namine Namah Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashyata Deshatarine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashyata Deshatarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jaya Radha Natvari Radha Natvari Radhe Jaya Radha Natvari Radha Natvari Radhe Jaya Radha Madan Mohan Jaya Radha Madan Mohan Radha Madan Mohan Radhe. Nitai Gaur Hari Bol Hari Bol Hari Bol Nitai Gaur Hari Bol Nitai Gaur Hari Bol Hari Bol Hari Bol Nitai Gaur Hari Bol. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Jaya Prabhupada 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Jaya Gurudev 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 Jaya Jaya Gurudev Jaya Jaya Gurudev 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 Jaya Jaya Gurudev. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna.
Thank you, ladies. So now we'll sing Yashomati Nandan. Yashomati Nandana Brajabadanagara Gokula Ranjana Kana.
Yashomati Nandana Brajabaranagara Gokula Ranjana Kana.
Gopi Paranadana Madana Manohara
Gopi Paranadhana Madana Manohara
Kaliya Damana Vidana
Kaliya Damana Vidhana
Amalaharina Mamiya Vilasa
Amalaharinam Amiya Vilasa
Vipina Purandara Navina Nagara Bara
Vipina Purandhara Navina Nagara Bara
Pamsi Vadana Suvasa
Bamsi Badana Suvasa
Braja Janapalana Surakulana Sana
Braja Janapalana Surakulanasana
Nanda Godana Rakovala
Nanda Godhana Rakhovala
Govinda Madhava Navanita Taskara
Govinda Madhava Navanita Taskara
Sundarananda Gopala
Sundarananda Gopala
Yamuna Tatachara Gopi Basanahara
Yamuna Tatachara Gopi Basanahara
Rasa Rasika Kripa Maya
Rasa Rasika Kripa Moya
Shirada Vallabha Vrindavana Nattabara
Shri Radha Vallabha Vrindavana Natabara
Bhakti Vinoda Ashraya
Bhakti Vinoda Ashraya
Lord Krishna is a beloved son of Mother Yashoda, the transcendental lover in the land of Raja, the delight of Gokul, Kana, and nickname of Krishna, the wealth of the lives of the gopis. He steals the mind of even Cupid and punishes the Kaliya serpent. These pure holy names of Lord Hari are full of sweet nectarian pastimes. Krishna is the lord of the 12 forests of Raja. He is ever youthful and is the best of lovers. He is always playing on a flute and he is an excellent dresser. Krishna is the protector of the inhabitants of Vraja, the destroyer of various demoniac dynasties, the keeper and tender of Nanda Maharaj's cows, the giver of pleasure to the cows, land, and spiritual senses, the husband of the goddess of fortune, the butter thief, and the beautiful cowherd boy of Nanda Maharaj. Krishna wanders along the banks of the river Yamuna. He stole the garments of the young damsels of Raja who were bathing there. He delights in the mellows of the rasa dance. He is very merciful, the lover and beloved of Srimati Radharani, the great dancer of Vrindavan, and the shelter and only refuge of Thakur Bhakti Vinod. Hare Krishna. So today we have a special guest giving today's lecture, or tonight's lecture. I'd like to welcome His Grace Devakinandan Prabhu. He is actually ISKCON's General Counsel. He's based out of Singapore, and he's been practicing law there for many years. So without further ado, Prabhu, the floor is yours.
Hare Krishna, Abhishek Prabhu. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada, to all the assembled Vaishnavas. If your father Nitai Gaurasundar Prabhu is here, I've never met him, but Hare Krishna to you. Okay, I see him now. Thank you. When Abhishek Prabhu invited me to join you all and have your association, I wasn't even sure which part of the US this was. But then I've had such good association with Abhishek Prabhu, and he's been such a wonderful asset to the law department with his enthusiasm and his wonderful innocence, which is such an important requisite for devotional service. I thought I should just take this up and try. Thank you for engaging me, everyone. I speak in an assembly of senior Vaishnavas. I seek your blessings, and please forgive me if I say something which is not in line, and please correct me if I do so. I asked if there's any particular topic, and Abhishek Prabhu was kind enough to just let me decide what I could speak. Bhagavatam has so many wonderful pastimes which are so important and so relevant to all of us. And many of the points in these pastimes that Bhagavatam gives us are very practical. They may appear, to be stories, but we should be very clear, as Srila Prabhupada states, that these are Puranas. Puranas are recorded histories in ancient civilizations. And therefore, all these pastimes are actually true. And because they are related to Krishna, and they are found in Srimad Bhagavatam, and they have had the touch of Shukadev Goswami, and they have been further sweetened by Srila Prabhupada's transcendental purports, it becomes very relishable and very wonderful for us to study deeply these pastimes and understand what we can get from them. So perhaps today, for the next 45 minutes, not more than an hour, I promise, we would speak about the pastime of that is found in the 6th canto, 18th chapter. The reason I'm just picking it up is because I've been reading it also for a few days as part of my daily reading, and I found that this is something that's very nice. The title of the chapter, of the 6th canto, 18th chapter, itself is very interesting. Diti vows to kill Indra. It's a very powerful title for a chapter. Generally speaking, in Bhagavatam, the principles are non-killing, the principles are very congenial and peaceful, and yet here's a pastime of someone wanting to kill someone. So it's an interesting point for us to take in Bhagavatam. Before we start, let's offer our obeisances to Srimad Bhagavatam. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Mudiraye. Before reciting this Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the very means of conquest, one should offer respectful obeisances unto the personality of Godhead Narayana, unto Narayana Rishi, the supermost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Nasta praeshu abhadreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavati uttama shloke bhaktir bhavati naishtiki. By regular attendance in classes on the Bhagavatam and by rendering of service to the pure devotee, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed. And loving service to the personality of Godhead, who is praised with transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. Jai Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki. So today we start this chapter on the premise of one very important component of devotional service. And that is actually found in a very interesting verse in the third canto, 25th chapter, 33rd verse. It's an interesting verse not only because of what it stands for, but because it's one of the few verses in Bhagavatam which has only 2 lines in terms of shlokas. So it's very unique, you know. So in that verse, it is very nicely stated by Kapila Dev to Devahuti, his mother. Jarayati ashu ya kosham nigirnam analo yatha. And the translation is very nice. Bhakti, devotional service, dissolves the subtle body of the living entity without separate effort, just as fire in the stomach digests all that we eat. I'll just repeat that again. Bhakti, devotional service, dissolves the subtle body of the living entity without separate effort, just as fire in the stomach digests all that we eat. So this is a very nice instruction that Devahuti actually is given by Kapila Dev. Because Kapila Dev is speaking about the glories of devotional service. And in fact, even though today's chapter that we're going to discuss, the pastime, seems to appear as if two personalities are not getting along, but the point of this entire chapter of the 6th canto, 18th chapter, is premised on this verse that we just discussed, or just we heard, that devotional service is so powerful that without separate effort, actually, it has the great power to dissolve all inebrities, to adjust all difficulties, because that is the power and purity of devotional service. And we, as devotees who are in the material world, we will find very often we are challenged by so many different qualities of material nature. We want to be transcendental, we want to be peaceful, we want to like everyone, we want to respect everyone, but sometimes the modes of material nature are so powerful, they can overtake us. And the 3 most difficult things that we face are pride, anger, and envy. These 3 are very powerful, and very often they are the reasons why there are so many challenges in devotional service. In this episode, it's very interesting because we find 2 very famous personalities in Bhagavatam. One of them is Indra, and the other is Diti. Indra, you all know, is the master of Swargaloka and one of the exalted devatas. And we know that Diti and Aditi were the 2 sisters, and they were both married to Kashyap. And Kashyap was a Prajapati. Therefore, his job or duty was to fill up creation and populate it. Through Aditi, he populated this world with all the devatas. And through Diti, he actually populated the world with all the asuras. And yet it's very interesting here because Bhagavatam starts in this chapter where Shukadev Goswami, in the 6th canto, 18th chapter, he starts by saying, he speaks about these devatas known as the Maruts. You would have heard of the Maruts. They are actually assistants to Indra in one sense, and they're very powerful over winds and typhoons and these areas of the forces of nature. So Shukadev Goswami one day, as he's speaking now, continuing his speaking of Bhagavatam, he says that 49 Maruts were born from the womb of Diti, Parikshit Maharaj. And although they were born from Diti, Indra gave them positions as devas. So the moment he said that, Shukadev Goswami's interest was piqued. And he said, my dear Lord, due to their birth, actually, these 49 Maruts must have been possessed of a demoniac mentality, because after all, they were born from Diti. How is it that Indra, the king of heaven, actually converted them, so to speak, into devas? You know, in material world, you have a conversion process, conversion programs where you move from one field to the other, isn't it? So Parikshit Maharaj was asking, how did this happen? You know, Diti was supposed to have demonic sons, and then Indra recruited them to become devas. This is very interesting. So that's how the entire pastime starts. And so then now Suta Goswami is speaking to the sages in Naimisharanya. And he says, after Shukadev Goswami heard Maharaj Parikshit asking this question, He then started explaining this very interesting story. Prabhupada, in that purport, the purport is very important. It's in the 6th canto, 18th chapter, 22nd verse. If you have time, please read that purport. Because Prabhupada writes in that purport that it's very important for us to understand that though the sons of Diti were demons, but they became demigods. And then Prabhupada quotes Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, and he says that even though Diti was envious in her heart was purified because of devotional attitude. So this is going to be the theme. We are always going to be challenged by pride, anger, envy in our hearts. But how do we get rid of them? Bhagavatam shows us the royal road of devotional service. So why was Diti so envious of Indra then? It is because Lord Vishnu, if you remember, killed the two brothers Hiranyaksha and then later Hiranyakashipu. And because they were killed, their mother Diti was very overwhelmed. She was overwhelmed with a mixture of lamentation and anger. And therefore she began thinking in her head, this Indra has unnecessarily killed my two sons. Yes, they are my sons, but Indra was very fond of over sense gratification. And because he was so fond of sense enjoyment, he killed my two sons because he did not want them to possess Swargaloka. So Diti was actually justifying why, her sons should not have been killed. So then she says in Bhagavatam, Indra is therefore very cruel, he's hard-hearted, and he's sinful. This is a challenge for us because very often, even when we meet devotees, it's so easy in our minds to start forming impressions of them. And the more critical we are by nature, the more difficult it is. Abhishek Prabhu will know that some of us are in the business of being critical, isn't it, Prabhu? And we are paid for that. And that is such a difficult thing when you try to become a devotee. So Diti was looking through those lenses of criticism. And therefore she said, the only way I can pacify my mind is when I kill Indra or have Indra killed. And sometimes we think that's the only conclusion to our pride and envy, that we must destroy someone or we must get rid of someone. And Diti was in that mood. So Diti was thinking, when people are dead, the rulers known as kings and great leaders will be transformed finally to just worms, stool, or ashes. But if someone is envious of others, does he know the true interests of life? She was talking about Indra. In other words, Diti was saying that it was Indra's envy and pride that led to the killing of her sons. So while she was contemplating on Indra, Diti did not realize one thing. If you criticize someone and meditate on their bad qualities, very often by that association, you also absorb that mentality. If you think about it carefully, it's a very dangerous way to associate. When we want sadhu sangha, we put Bhagavatam in the center. And therefore, all our emphasis is on Bhagavatam. And therefore, all the qualities of Bhagavatam by association, we absorb it. But when we meditate on someone in a critical way, we don't realize that while meditating on them, we are acquiring those qualifications or disqualifications that we ourselves are criticizing. And that's very dangerous. There is a saying, that when a dog bites a man, it's no news, isn't it? Because it's very natural for a dog to bite man. But when the man bites the dog back, now that's news. Because it's not in the nature of man to bite the dog. So it's very important as Vaishnavas that we understand that counteraction of this kind is actually counterproductive to devotional service. So thinking in this way, Diti decided, let me try and satisfy my husband Kashyap. Kashyap is very powerful. If I satisfy him and please him with service, love, and humility, and if I give sweet words to satisfy him, I will then be able to please him to such an extent that hopefully he will ask me for a boon. And when he asks me for a boon, I will then ask him for a son who can kill Indra. So this was Diti's motive. So what happened? She began serving her husband very nicely. Not to say that she didn't serve him well last time, but I think she just added the service more. And she continued serving him very pleasingly. Now, Bhagavatam tells us that Kashyap was a learned scholar. He was very well skilled He knew Sastric knowledge very well, but he was captivated by Dithi's. Now, this is the word that's used in Bhagavatam. You can look it up. Remember, we are looking at the 18th chapter. Yeah, the 18th chapter. So the verse that we're looking at is actually 29. When you have time, you see how Prabhupada translates it. Prabhupada translates it as, although Kashyap Muni was a learned scholar, he was captivated by Dithi's artificial behavior, which brought him under her control. So sometimes it's very important for us in devotional service, whatever devotional service we do, even in our relationships between devotees, we must introspect whether we are doing it with a motive or we are doing it simply to serve the devotees. Ahai tuki aprati hata yayatma suprasidati. That verse is very important. If we want to render devotional service to Krishna, it's a package deal. Rendering service to Krishna means rendering service to his devotees also. Therefore, when we approach devotees and serve them, our motive must always be noble and correct. If our motive is not correct, then our devotional service becomes interrupted. Ahaituki apratihata means unmotivated and uninterrupted. If we perform devotional service without that kind of motivation, Krishna will ensure that the devotional service will not be interrupted. This is very important. So Dithi approached her husband with that idea. And Kashyap, came under the sway of Dithi. And he assured his wife that I will fulfill whatever desire that you want. You have served me so well, and it's so nice. Now, at this point, Prabhupada quotes Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, and he says that Kashyap was a very spiritually elevated personality. He was very learned, but devotional service is not the monopoly of the learned nor the scholarly. This is a very important point. Sometimes we think, that we have to have some educational qualification to become devotees. But Bhagavatam is very clear, whole Bhagavatam is clear, that every devotee of Bhagavatam proved this very important point, that factually speaking, no material qualification is needed to approach Krishna. In fact, Kunti Mata says, Janma Aishwarya Sruta Srivir, Eda Mana Madaha Puman, Nai Varhati Abhidatum Vai, Tvam Akinchana Gochara. In the first canto, 8th chapter, she sings this important verse to say that on the other hand, high parentage, Janma, Aishwarya, some kind of opulence, Shruta and Shribir, education, even good looks. In material world, they're qualifications. But in spiritual life, if we become very attached to them and are proud of them, they actually become disqualifications. So therefore, Kashyap may have been very qualified, but devotional service is not the monopoly of knowledge. This is a very important point. Srila Prabhupada quoted a nice verse from the Katha Upanishad. I'm just trying to remember. Nayam Atma Pravachanena Labhyo, Na Medaya Na Bahuna Shrutena, Yam Evaisha Vrinute Tena Labhyas, Tasyaisha Atma Vivrinute Tanum Swam. It's a very important verse. It appears in Prabhupada shlokas also. Krishna is not obtained by expert explanations, nor is he obtained by vast intelligence, nor is he even obtained by hearing. He is only obtained by one whom he himself chooses. To such a person, he manifests his own forms. So as devotees, no matter how much qualification we may acquire, we must always remember that ultimately, if Krishna wants to reveal something, it is his monopoly to reveal to us. And because of Krishna, that mercy comes through the devotees and acharyas. That is how we receive this knowledge. So then Kashyap told his wife, my dear wife, you are so kind. You have treated me so well. So since I'm very much pleased by your behavior, do one thing. Ask from me any benediction you want. If a husband is pleased, what desires are difficult for his wife to obtain? So Kashyap was thinking, that she needs something. I'm very powerful. I will give it to her. But he doesn't realize what she's going to ask, you see. So sometimes we may have this idea that, yes, I have something to give you. But Krishna has a way of checkmating us, isn't it? So this is what happened here actually. Because then Dithi turned and said, my dear husband, you have taken so good care of me. But I am lamenting. I'm in pain. I have lost two of my great sons, Hiranyaksha and Hiranyakashipu. If you want to give me a benediction, then I ask you to give me an immortal son who will kill Indra. I pray for this because Indra, with the help of Vishnu, has killed my two sons, Hiranyaksha and Hiranyakashipu. This is very important. Now, in that verse, and this is the 37th verse, if you look at the word-to-word transliteration of Bhagavatam, and please, I would request, whenever we study Bhagavatam, please always look at the word-to-word transliteration. The word-to-word transliterations that Prabhupada gives are gems. They give us so much in-depth understanding of the translation, and then it's churned again in the purports. So in the word-to-word, Prabhupada writes in the purport, Indra Hanam means one who can kill Indra, but it can also mean one who follows Indra. So sometimes we may have one motive, but Krishna may change our plans to something else. So Diti thought that she had caught a husband, and she thought, now you have asked me for a boon and I'm asking you now for it, you must give it to me. Now when Kashyap heard this, he became very aggrieved. He was thinking to himself, alas, I face the danger of a great impious act of killing Indra. Now he realized, that even though he was eager to fulfill the desire of his wife Diti, but when he heard that a son is to be given to her to kill Indra, he wanted no part in it. He was very averse to the idea. So now what did Kashyap Muni do? Sometimes, we love our loved ones, but if they ask us for something which goes against the whole grain of Krishna consciousness, but we have given a vow, what do? It's a practical issue here. At the same time, Kashyap was well aware that whatever he speaks must come true. So he is a devotee, and he was praying very hard. He thought to himself, and this is very important, it shows us the thought process of a devotee. Kashyap was thinking, this is my mistake. I have become so attached to sense enjoyment and material enjoyment. Taking advantage of this, my mind was attracted by the illusory energy of my sweet wife who spoke to me nicely, and I thought that I am so powerful I can give her anything. But I realized I am not powerful, and I have become humbled by this matter. I am therefore a wretched person who will glide down this hill. Then he said, whatever Diti is asking is not surprising. She is upset. She is following her nature. Therefore, she is not to be blamed. But condemnation must be upon me. I am supposed to be Prajapati, and yet I'm not at all conversant with what is good for me, and I could not control my senses. Why is this point important? Because when a Vaishnava or great devotees we see in Bhagavatam, when they are put into difficulty, they never blame others. Parikshit Maharaj, in the end, even though he put a garland of a dead snake on Shamika Rishi, Bhagavatam tells us as he left the scene, he began to repent in his heart. When Chitraketu Maharaj was cursed by Parvati Mata because of his callous comments, about her being seated on Lord Shiva's lap, he got down from the airplane and folded his arms, and he accepted her curse, so to speak. So you will see that the devotees of the Lord, na asya tat pratikurvanti, they are not inclined to counteract, rather they introspect. This is very important. Parikshit means to examine. Parikshit Maharaj did not examine everybody else for faults. He only looked at himself. When he was cursed, he never blamed anyone. In fact, so nicely Parikshit Maharaj said to Krishna that, "Oh Krishna, you have so kindly come now to overtake me in the form of a Brahmana's curse." He saw the hand of Krishna in a difficult situation. And he said, why have you come like this, my Lord, in the form of a curse? Because I have become too attached to my kingdom, and you want to take me out of it. So you'll see that there is a pattern in Bhagavatam, that whenever we are confronted with a situation where it is potentially one where we can blame others, oh, it's because of Diti, not because of me, then we lose the devotional service. Kashyap did not do that. He accepted, I can't blame my wife. I should look at myself. That is why, as devotees, it's important that our garden is in order. Before we look at someone else's garden and say, why this is this, why this is that, better our garden is in order. And so Kashyap said, now I have promised to give a benediction. I cannot violate that promise. But at the same time, Indra does not deserve to be killed. In this situation, I must find a solution which is suitable. And he prayed very hard to Krishna. And then, of course, Krishna is Krishna. He always guides the sincere devotees. And so then what happened was, Kashyap Muni then decided, this is what I will do. He turns now to Diti and he said, my dear Diti, whatever that you have asked from me, if you follow my instructions, I will give you a vow that you must take. This vow is known as the Pumsavana vow. It will last for 1 whole year, my dear wife. You must follow it to the T. If you follow it very well, you will have a son who will kill Indra. But if you deviate from your vow at any point of time, then this son will not kill Indra. He will be favorable to Indra. So he set the terms now. The terms are ready and clear now, and he set it down for Diti. As he did this, he was praying very hard that somehow or another, he had faith that if Diti were to follow this vow, her consciousness and her heart will change. And so what was this vow? It's very interesting. He told her now, you must follow this. And what did Diti say? My dear husband Brahmana, I will accept your advice. I will follow the vow. Just tell me what I have to do, and I'll make sure I follow it. Now, in Diti's mind, all she was thinking is, get a child to kill Indra, get a child to kill Indra. In Kashyap's mind, all he was thinking is, find a way to stop Diti, find a way to change her consciousness. And Krishna is Paramatma, right? He has the great ability to adjust things. So now Kashyap tells her, my dear wife, if you want to follow this vow, this is the first thing you must do. You cannot be envious of anyone. This is so nice. Her whole idea is premised on envy of Indra. But the starting part of the vow is, don't be envious. You cannot feel violent towards anyone. You cannot cause harm even in your heart to anyone. You cannot curse anyone. You should not be speaking lies. And then he told her the other things, like don't cut your nails and hair, don't touch impure things like skulls and bones. You should not go out in the evening with your hair loose. You must be decorated with ornaments. You must wash your feet before you lie down. Those were all the supplementaries, but the starting point was very important. And he told her for the whole year, you must dedicatedly worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So what was the solution that Kashyap was relying on? He was relying on this important principle that if anyone takes up devotional service, even if the heart has one motive, devotional service is so powerful, it will eventually cleanse our hearts. That is the greatness of devotional service. That's why, there's what I am just remembering. There's one very nice verse from Bhagavatam. 11th canto, 5th chapter, 42nd verse. 11.5.42. Yes, 11.5.42. Swapadamulam bhajata priyasya tyaktanyabhavasya hare paresha vikarma yachot patitam katanchit dhunoti sarvam hridhi sannivishtaha. So such a nice verse, Bhagavatam shlokas, just by chanting them, there's so much of peace and so much of inspiration. So whenever we are troubled or any problems, please just chant the shlokas. Krishna is wandering in the shlokas, and you will immediately, instantly experience that there's something very transcendental about Bhagavatam. So the translation to that verse is important. If someone has given up all engagements and taken the full shelter of the lotus feet of Hari, that person, right, becomes very dear to him. Swapada moolam bhajataha priyasya. Priyasya means one who is very dear to Krishna. Then Bhagavatam tells us, even if such a surrendered soul accidentally commits some sinful activity, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is Krishna, is in the heart, right? Sannivishtaha, he's in the heart of everyone. He takes away the reaction to such sins. That is the power of Krishna consciousness. That is the power of devotional service. Kashyap did not bother to use arguments to dissuade Diti. He did not try logic or intelligence to tell her, no, cannot do this. No, he decided, let me invest my full faith in the process of devotional service. And let me leave this to Krishna, because he is all powerful. And if someone practices this, Krishna will change her heart. He will change her heart. So much faith he had. And therefore he told her all this. And after he told her this, he said, now, if you perform this for 1 whole year, everything will be fine. But remember, If there's a discrepancy in the discharge of the vow, you'll have your son. But my dear Diti, he'll become best friends with Indra. Of course, Diti didn't want that, right? So in fact, in a very interesting way, he increased her enthusiasm to make sure she follows the vow. If you ask me, that was brilliant. Abhishek Prabhu, that's a strategy, isn't it, that you want to use even in a case. Very, very good. See, Bhagavatam is so practical. So now, Diti started her vow. See, Indra is a devata, so he's very powerful. So what he did was he immediately could realize by his power, he could understand Diti's purpose. Why suddenly the mother of the demons has become such a great follower of a Pumsavana vow? There is something there. So Bhagavatam tells us to fulfill his own interests and following the logic of self-preservation as the first law of nature. He decided, I have to find a way to break a promise. If I don't find a way to break a promise, the child born will kill me. But if I find a way to break a promise, the child will be my friend. She will lose. So what did he do? He came all the way to see Diti. Diti is his auntie, isn't it? And he said, my dear auntie, I heard you've taken a great vow. So can I be of service to you? Can I, your nephew, engage in the service of you who's residing in the ashram? Now, Diti herself knew that this is the man I want to kill. But you see, the problem is when we are proud or envious of each other, we don't speak the truth to each other. So Indra came with one intent and sweetly said something else. Diti said, my dear nephew, welcome to my ashram. Of course you can serve me. But in her heart, she was thinking, don't worry, I'll follow this very nicely and I'll make sure that whatever happens, you are finished. So this is how sometimes, we have to be very careful in our dealings with each other. But we forget, Sannivishtaha, Krishna is in the heart finally. And therefore, Bhagavatam gives this nice example in text 58. Bhagavatam says, as the hunter of a deer becomes like a deer by covering his body with deer skin and serving the deer, Indra, although at heart the enemy of the sons of Diti, became outwardly friendly. See, he became outwardly friendly and he served Diti in a faithful way. But his purpose, Bhagavatam tells us, was to cheat Diti as soon as he could find some fault. In other words, he was just waiting for an opportunity. But he wanted to be undetected, and therefore he served her very carefully. There's a material in this material world, when you study battle plans and war, there is a saying, that you keep your friends close, but you keep your enemies closer. That's what Indra was trying to do, you see. So then Indra started watching and finding for fault. But now he became really anxious because Diti was such a good proponent of the vow that he couldn't find any problems. There was no fault. And when you try to find fault in someone and you can't find fault in someone, actually you are the one who cannot sleep. Diti was sleeping very nicely, but Indra was trying to find fault, but he couldn't. So he was anxious. And Bhagavatam says he kept asking, how will there be good fortune for me? He was in deep anxiety. But one day, Diti became weak and thin. She was trying to follow the principles of the vow properly, right? And it required a lot of austerity. One day, she unfortunately neglected to wash her mouth, her hands and feet after having prasad. And so she went to sleep also at the wrong time, evening twilight time. Normally evening twilight, we are encouraged to stay awake. That's why we have Gora Arti that time, right? Nobody should sleep at that time. So that's such a practical way to stay awake. Huh? But anyway, Diti went to sleep. The moment she went to sleep, I think Indra had this list, he's always ready. In his mind, he's looking, which one has she broken? Aha, she's breached this one. So now he knew, he found the fault. And with his mystic powers, he became very small and he entered into Diti's womb that evening. She was so tired, she was practically unconscious and she was fast asleep. When he entered Diti's womb, it was very interesting. Normally, the womb of a mother is very dark, isn't it? There's no electricity, nobody burns a candle. And if you are an unborn child there, it's good that we cannot remember our time in the womb, because Bhagavatam tells us it's a very difficult time. A child is arched like a bent over bow, Bhagavatam tells us. And in that position, the child remains for 9 months. If the mother is happy, she transmits happiness to child. If she eats something very sour, child has to tolerate it. Eats something very hot, he has to tolerate it. So it's a very difficult thing. The womb is a difficult place. But Indra found that the womb was actually golden in hue. It was amazing. And then he saw the womb, in the womb he saw the child. And what did he do? Immediately he took his thunderbolt and he cut the embryo that was growing in her into 7 pieces. But all 7 pieces appeared like glowing gold. That is why her whole womb was actually so effulgent. And in 7 places where he cut, Bhagavatam tells us 7 different living beings actually sprouted out. And they all began crying. They all cried. And Indra said, quiet, I'm here to kill all of you. He was thinking, I'm going to kill all of you. If you make noise, she's going to wake up. So he just said, do not cry, do not cry. And after saying do not cry, he cut them again into 7 pieces. Normally when you tell someone don't cry, you pacify them. Here he said don't cry and he cut them again. But even after cutting them, with his yogic power, with all that he had, what happened? Again, the living beings there from 7 multiplied again. And therefore, there were 49 living beings glowing in the womb of Mother Diti. And they became all very aggrieved. They all cried. And they turned to Indra with folded hands and said, dear Indra, we are the Maruts. We are your brothers. Why are you trying to kill us? When Indra realized, wait a minute, these 49 beings are my devoted followers, immediately he had a shift of heart. And he said, if you're all my brothers, then why do I have to fear from you? I have nothing to fear from you. I didn't know that. I thought you all were going to kill me. But this is good news. And at that point of time, Indra became very pleased. Now, at that moment, because of worshipping in the Supreme Personality of Godhead so much, Indra did not realize, and neither did Diti, that she was actually becoming purified. Even when our intent when performing devotional service is not correct, Krishna is so kind that he rectifies and course corrects us in such a way that our consciousness must eventually become purified. See how powerful Krishna is. In Krishna book, there's the story of the thief who wanted to steal jewelry from Krishna, isn't it? And he was observing Krishna's movements every day. And he was thinking, oh, Krishna is like a walking jewelry shop, It's so easy. Might as well I just take Krishna and all the jewelry will come to me. And so he tried to play with Krishna and he took Krishna everywhere. And finally, after a long time of having association with Krishna, by the time he came back, Krishna then told him, what do you want from me? I think you must be wanting something from me. And the thief who was ready to steal everything from Krishna admitted that Krishna had stolen everything from him. Because Krishna had stolen the most precious thing that you and I have, our hearts. Our hearts. And that is what happened to Diti. Diti started this journey, of a vow with a very ill intent. But Krishna is so kind that even if we start on the wrong foot, Krishna is so compassionate that the power of devotional service dissolves without separate effort. As the verse we spoke at the beginning, it dissolves without separate effort all these material impurities. And it awards us the highest benediction. If someone like Diti, who had so much of envy and pride and revenge in her heart, could actually be transformed, then how much more will devotees who are trying very hard every day to try and remember Krishna, chant his names, and serve him? This is the great encouraging point of this episode. So Diti, woke up at that moment. And when she woke up, she turned, to see Indra there. And to her surprise, 49 beautiful beings had come out of her womb and they were standing there too. So she was wondering. She got up from bed and she saw Indra and 49 sons with Indra. They were all as brilliant as fire. And she realized they were in friendship with Indra. No one looked like they were going to kill Indra. But Bhagavatam says, and this is in text 68, when Diti saw her sons in friendship with Indra, she was very pleased. Amazing. Here was a lady intent to kill her nephew, but devotional service changed her heart. So then when she saw 49 sons being friends with Indra, she was all right. She was all right. And then she turned to Indra and said, my dear son, I took this difficult vow just to get a son to kill you. That's what I did. I prayed for only one son, now I have 49. How has this happened, Indra? And now she tells him something interesting. If you know this, please tell me the truth. Do not try to speak lies. It's very interesting, because at the beginning, both Diti and Indra told lies to each other. Diti said, welcome, come and serve me. Indra said, I'm coming to serve you only because you're my dear auntie. But now, because of Krishna consciousness and devotional service, Diti said, please speak the truth. Please don't speak lies to me now. And what did Indra say? Indra's reply in the 71st verse is very important. Now Indra is repenting. He says, my dear mother, because I was grossly blinded by my own selfish interests, I lost sight of religion. In other words, I lost sight of the aim of devotional service. Savai pumsam paro dharmo yator bhakti radok saje. The main purpose of all our dharmas is finally to render transcendental service to the Absolute. Only when we do that without motivation and without interruption, yayatma suprasidati, then only we can become satisfied in this world. Anything else in this world, anything motivated by anything else except Krishna, it may appear very valuable, but finally it will drag us down. Isn't that the second shloka of Chatushloka in Bhagavatam 2.9.34? Rite ritam yat pratyeta na pratyeta chatmani. Tadvidvan atmano mayam yatha bhasho yatha tamaha. Something may look very valuable. Sometimes we want something and we think that's very important to us, but we don't realize if it is not in relation to Krishna, it actually has no value. It will drag us, drag our senses, drag our minds. It will drag our hearts away from the goal of life. So Indra said, it was my selfish interest to preserve my designation, my kingdom, my pride. I actually lost sight of my goal of religion. When I understood, Mother, that you were going to do a great vow, I wanted to find some fault in you. I admit it. And when I found the fault, I entered your womb and I cut the embryo into pieces. This is a very important point. Now, in the purport to that verse, Prabhupada says something. He says, when Diti explained to Indra without reservations, Indra also revealed his heart to her. Instead of becoming enemies, because of devotional service, they both freely spoke the truth. This is a very important point. So, sometimes people ask this question, should we develop good qualities first and then take up devotional service? But Bhagavatam, especially in the 5th canto, 18th chapter, 12th verse, that famous verse, Yasya asti bhakti bhagavati akinchana sarvei gunaistatra samasate suraha. In that verse, it's very clear that if you take up sincere devotional service, all good qualities, they automatically come. And you can see, Diti started this pastime with not the best of qualities. Indra started this pastime with not the best of qualities. But because Diti engaged in devotional service, and Indra, unknown to him, was serving Diti, who was trying to be engaged in devotional service, subtly, Indra was also becoming purified. So therefore, Indra now told Diti, when I saw all your 49 sons alive after I killed them, I wanted to kill them. They didn't die, Mother. Why? Because of the grace of the Supreme Lord. They all were alive. When I saw that all 49 sons were alive, I was certainly struck with wonder. And I decided then that the reason why they are alive is because of your devotional service. You regularly executed devotional service in the worship of Vishnu. This is a very important word that Prabhupada uses, regularly executing. It's so important for us to be regular in devotional service. But another thing that's important is regular means constant also. Sometimes I can say, I chant one round once a year, that's very regular. It's also regular. Oh, I'm chanting 2 rounds, and I make sure every 2 weeks I do it. That's regular also. Our mind is very smart to come up with these favorable arguments. But in Bhagavatam, very often when Prabhupada uses the word regular, he also uses the word consistently or constantly. So because every day she was doing devotional service, Indra could understand Diti's womb became purified, her consciousness became purified, the sons who were growing in her, that womb, that embryo also became purified. And because of that, the sons became devotees of the Lord. That's why they followed Indra. And Indra, even though he was a devata, but his behavior was demonic because he served Diti knowingly, unknowingly, with good intention or not good intention, he also became purified. So that's why we congregate. I'm seeing this congregation. There are 24 participants, and I'm sure it's like 2 everywhere, so maybe 50. It's so nice that you're gathering, you know, day in, day out. I heard from Abhishek Prabhu the programs that you have, the wonderful sannyasis and Maharajas who are giving your association. This is how we are safe and secure in devotional service. Even if we want to have some motive, the great Assembled Vaishnavas Association will check the material motives. Just like Indra was checked by Diti's devotional service, just like Diti was checked by her own devotional service, and just like how Kashyap found some way out of this difficult situation to please the wife, but also to make her into a devotee, all because of the power of devotional service. So Indra then turned to Diti and said, "My dear mother, I ask you for forgiveness today, and I've learned the value of devotional service. Now please give me permission to go back with your sons to Swargaloka, because now they are my friends." And Diti, even though the mother of demons, she had this exception today because she was touched by devotional service. And she gave her blessings to her son. And that one question, that Parikshit Maharaj asked, how come Diti could give birth to the Maruts? Today we are the beneficiaries of that question. Because for 40 minutes or so, we have heard such an amazing power of devotional service. So how do we conclude this beautiful pastime? Some thoughts, that we can share from this pastime. One of the important things is Diti started in this pastime. She started in this pastime very disturbed, and she was angry. She wanted peace of mind actually, but she didn't realize that when we are angry, critical, or vengeful, it is diametrically opposite to achieving peace. We cannot achieve peace when we have these feelings in our heart. When we are vengeful of others, when we criticize, condemn, and fault find, we become blind to the fact that actually we have also become exactly like the people that we despise. We have assumed their nature also. So Diti considered Indra in the beginning to be foolish because she said, he's so foolish because he killed my sons because he thinks his body is eternal. Yet that very same concept she absorbed because she wanted Indra to be killed. She didn't realize that his time also will end. Finally, everybody dies. That's good news or bad news, depending on how you look at it. But everybody has to die. Sometimes people come and ask me, in Krishna consciousness, you say nothing is eternal. And I tell them it's very good. Because if you're suffering now, the good news is the suffering has to stop eventually. But the other news is if you're very happy now, be prepared. At some point, you will not be so happy. But that is the fact. And that is what Diti had to realize. Second point that's very important. Diti's entire vengeance and anger to Indra was premised on the idea that Indra caused death to her sons. But she missed the first principle of Bhagavatam, that ultimately it is the Lord's arrangement when we die, how we die, or who should die. Especially with Hiranyaksha and Hiranyakashipu. They have a pastime from Jai and Vijay. So it was really the Lord's arrangement that they were killed actually by Krishna. And that's one thing interesting. Diti was upset with Indra, but she didn't show her anger to Vishnu. Even though Vishnu was the one who came as Varaha and Narsingadev, yet she was only looking at Indra. The point here to be understood is, even when the demons are envious of Krishna, they must also accept his supremacy whether they like it or not. Because ultimately, Krishna is in charge. So Diti missed this point. She was lamenting for her sons, but she didn't realize that it is the Lord's arrangement through providence, when we die, and how we go. The same difficulty Chitraketu Maharaj had, if you remember, right? He was very upset that his son had died, but it was the Lord's arrangement. So this is something that we must understand. Mayai vaite nihata purva eva nimitta matra bhavya savya sachi. 1133 of Bhagavad Gita. Krishna makes it very clear that Arjuna, you may kill everyone here, but you please know, Mayai vaite, by my arrangement, all those who have to be killed have been killed. So then Arjuna may be asking, if you have killed everyone, why am I here? And then he says, you are nimitta matra. Become my instrument. The good news about instrument is that in the hands of a thief, it may hurt, but in the hands of a surgeon, it may heal. So, instrument itself is not liable. If you get sued, nobody sues the instrument. Everyone will sue the person who held the instrument. So, if you become instrument, actually, you're very free. That's why Arjuna could sleep very well during Mahabharata war. If he took a vow, he went to sleep, Krishna was awake. And when Krishna came and said, Arjuna, you are not afraid that you took a vow and tomorrow they want to kill you? And Arjuna said, why should I be afraid? You are here. So, like this, we become very peaceful when we understand Krishna's hand is there. That's why in Bhagavatam, Krishna is known as Otam Protam. Huh? Yamaraj instructs the messengers in that part of the chapter of Ajamil's pastime. If you look up, you will see Yamaraj very nicely refers to Krishna as the Otam and the Protam, the horizontal and the vertical. You're all wearing dhoti and kurtas, right? And maybe saris and whatever. This material is actually, when you look carefully, it's nothing but threads crisscrossing. If the fabric of the thread is good, then the kurta will survive. If the fabric is poor, the kurta will tear. So if the fabric of our devotional service is strong, because we accept Krishna as Otam Protam, then no matter what happens, Krishna will guide us through these difficulties. And he will show us his hand in these things. Because Diti did not accept and saw the hand of Krishna, she became very disturbed. But then she had the association of Kashyap. And that's the final point today, the importance of association. We can never ever underestimate the importance of sadhu sangha. Even though Diti thought she will bear her association on her husband, because Kashyap accepted devotional service, she wanted to cheat him, but he cheated her. But this cheating with devotional service is transcendental fraud, if I may use that word. And that's very nice. Krishna cheats us all the time. We think Krishna doesn't see, I'm not chanting, in front of someone I can chant, but Krishna knows. And therefore, if we try to cheat devotees, devotees will cheat us. But they cheat us well. Kashyap cheated his wife, but he made her a devotee. Very, very important point. So actually, Kashyap was a well-wisher to her. And he took her away from the platform of revenge. And that's why association of devotees, especially like-minded association, it really helps us actually. And one last point, devotional service to the Lord is so powerful that unknown to the mother Diti, her womb became purified. Even the unborn child indirectly became powerful. Her unborn child was protected by the Lord. That's why he didn't die. And he eventually became the 49 Maruts. So what should we do? We should have firm faith in devotional service. We should not artificially think that we need something else to support our devotional service. Devotional service does not depend on time, place, circumstances, and condition. Devotional service does not depend on designations. Devotional service simply depends on sincere appreciation and practice, and always taking nice association, and never giving up, and always having faith in Krishna. Therefore, instead of having envy, pride, anger in our hearts, devotional service replaces that with compassion, understanding, um, and all these qualities come very naturally. And mind you, Diti and Indra, they are not considered to be what we call pure devotees. And even then, devotional service works so well. Even then, it works so well. So if any living entity who is sincere takes up devotional service in a pure manner, how much more powerful will devotional service work on us? Jai Granthara Srimad Bhagavatam. Jai Srila Prabhupada. Jai Srila Gurudev. My obeisances to all the assembled Vaishnavas. Thank you so much for your association. Hare Krishna.
Prabhu, if you're agreeable, can we open the floor up to any questions?
Sure, sure.
If you have any questions, please feel free to go ahead and unmute yourself.
I have no question, but I will like to thank you, Prabhu, for a wonderful description of this wonderful Bhagavatam episode. And you summarized it so wonderfully. And here, I think you saw in chat, our friend Amit wrote it.
Yes.
Wonderful narration. So I just second it, and I thank you for, and I hope you will come again and bless with your association. So I think I hope some will have some other questions, but that's my comment. Thank you very
Thank
much.
you. Thank you, Prabhu. Very kind of you. And I hope to take more of your Sangha also. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Mataji.
That's why they say that surrender into Krishna and he will take care of you. Is that with the devotional service and with all the uh, affections and things that we learn from our Guru Maharaj?
Yes. That is the point, Mataji. That's the essence of surrender, actually. The essence of surrender is that we have faith that Krishna is so powerful and transcendental that we'll always be under his protection and shelter. Surrender also means that we understand that whatever happens to us, there's always the hand of Krishna. And instead of finding the negative things about the things that happen to us, we patiently see it as Krishna's hand to make us into better devotees. In that way, we don't become disturbed. And even if we are disturbed, we increase the quality of our devotional service and we become more and more dependent on Krishna. Dependence also means that we may have something that we want from Krishna, but we must be prepared that finally Krishna knows best. So you may ask for one thing and Krishna may give another. Diti asked one thing, right? But in the end, Krishna gave us something else. But because Diti was purified by the sincere devotional service, when that thing that she wanted was changed, Krishna gave her the strength to accept it also. I hope that's useful, Mataji.
Yes, thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Are there any other questions or comments? Okay. Devikinandan Prabhu, again, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Prabhu.
To have
You have no idea how pleasurable it is to discuss Bhagavatam instead of looking at legal cases. So.
I might have.
But that is also service, so we have to do that. But this is pleasurable service, so this is nice. That's the spice, this is the sweet.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you. And I
Ramgiri,
wish...
you have a question?
Oh, yeah.
Hare Krishna, Devikananda Prabhu, Dhanavad, Ramgiridhari here.
Ramgiridhari Prabhu, Hare Krishna.
I just want to, thank you also because it's a pleasure to hear from you for a long time. So thank you so much for enlightening us.
Hold on, Prabhu. I didn't realize it was Ram Giridhari Prabhu, as in the Giridhari Prabhu that I know. I didn't know you were there.
Well, I'm right now in Mumbai only, but I somehow, when Nitai Gaur-Sundar Prabhu was kind enough to, give me a small shelter in his lotus feet, so I keep attending this Sangha with the help of Maharaj. So it's a pleasure to hear Bhagavatam from you, Prabhu. It's wonderful. Thank you so much.
So happy to see you and hear you. Thank you, Prabhu. Very happy to see you. Hare Krishna. Thank you, Abhishek Prabhu.
Thank you, Prabhu.
So with your permission, I will take leave.
Yes, Prabhu. Thank you.
And please, if I can be of any service anytime, you have my contact number, you have my details. I will be happy to be of service and to take your association.
Yes,
and
sir.
If you have programs anytime, I'll be happy to hear from the August Assembly of Speakers that you have also.
I will forward you the invitation, the Zoom links. It's every evening at 8 p.m., so it'll be 9 p.m. your time.
Yeah, this time suits me very well. So it's a good time to sit and hear Bhagavatam, actually.
Especially let Prabhu know when Giriraj Maharaj and Giridhari Maharaj and
yes, please.
Coming on.
Yeah, absolutely. Nice. I will forward that to you.
Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Shall we do Vaishnava Pranam now?
Yeah, we'll do that. Okay, if everyone will go ahead and mute themselves or recite the Vaishnava Pranam prayer.
Patitanam pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo namo namah.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Thank you.
Krishna.
It was wonderful. Thank you.